G'day, folks. Today, what I'm going to take you through is my top 100 power rankings tier list. So, look, given later in the month for ESPN, I've been asked to do my final power rankings. I'm unable, for the purposes of this video, to order the players. So, what I've done within each of the tiers, I've basically listed them off alphabetically. But it will give you an idea as to, well, where are all the sweet spots in the draft? And of course, well, who are all the players that I rate this year? So, so who are all the players that I consider draftable? So, if this video gets to 50 plus likes, well, I'm willing to do, I guess, a final edition of my power rankings. And I'm actually happy to list each player labeled 1 through 100. So I'm actually going to rank all those players if I get up to 50 likes. So, make sure before we start, make sure you like, and if you haven't already, subscribe and hit the notification bell for future updates, and let's get stuck in. Okay, so what I've got here is my top 100 power rankings. You can call it October edition, given I produced it yesterday. So, and of course, the time of producing this video is the 1st of November, 2022. So to go through, so again, quick reminder for those that just skipped the introduction. All the players are within the tiers as I see them as of today, but the key thing to recognize is within the tiers, they're all alphabetically listed because I will be producing one more power ranking, so my November power rankings for ESPN. So for the November edition, you can expect that the players will be picked from within these tiers. So basically, my top 20 for November will be picked from this, I guess you can call it, group of 22 more broadly. And you can expect my top 10 to only include players from this group of 10 I've got here. And you can expect these to be my top 2 in whatever order I decide. So, but yeah, again, quick reminder, if I get 50 plus likes, I'll do another edition after my power rankings are released on ESPN, so my final version, and I will do a top 100 ranked power rankings. So there might be some slight moves, but I'm hoping that the players remain roughly in the tiers that they are, and hopefully there aren't too many I need to add and remove, but I'll have to see, but I think it'll stay roughly as it looks at this stage. So to take us through firstly, so for me at least, and this is only in my own power rankings, but I see a clear top two talents in this draft. So we've got Will Ashcroft, we've got Mateus Filippo. So important thing to note with Filippo, he's not going to be a top 2 pick on draft day. I can tell you that right now. He'll most likely land in the, we could call it 5 to 15 range. Could be a reasonable range to put him in. And more likely than not, I would say he probably goes within the top 10. So obviously he is a player that I rate very differently to clubs, but I'll go into why in a moment. So Will Ashcroft firstly. So in my October edition, he was my number 1 ranked player. And the reason being is he's the most immediate player in this draft. So from next year, he can go into Brisbane, and assuming he plays a prominent midfield role, he could get up to 25 disposals, 12 contested. And on a lot of those, he'll be bursting 5 to 15 metres with ball in hand. And if he's not doing that, well, then he's distributing nicely, mostly by hand. And if he can find a target by foot, he'll do that too at times. So he's got a good balance with all that. So yeah, most immediate player, and in future weeks on espn.com.au/AFL, I'll also do a comparison piece between Ashcroft and Dacos. So I'll go through basically, well, who is the better father-son? And for a quick spoiler, there is absolutely nothing in it. It's a very hard call to make. Really, we're talking fine margins here. So expect them both to be terrific and have incredible careers respectively. So watch out for that one. But look, with Brisbane adding not only Dunkley and Gunston, but also Ashcroft over the off-season, truthfully, as of today, if you asked me who do I think is winning the 2023 AFL Premiership, I'm actually saying probably Brisbane as my early pick. So no idea where betting agencies have them, but I don't think betting agencies would be necessarily aware of how good Ashcroft is. So And given that as well, he'd be an early rising star pick. Not that necessarily my rising star picks pan out all that well historically, with probably most of them getting injured over time. So hopefully that's not a bad omen for Ashcroft. But he's certainly an absolute immediate player, as Dacos was this year. So get excited, Brisbane fans. But then we've got, I guess this will probably end up being one of the more divisive ones early, but Mateus Filippo. And the reason I've got him at number 2 is clear cut, and just watch a highlight reel of him and you'll get it right away. So he's Marcus Bontempelli 2.0, and I'm not even sure if he's a poor man's version. So he might actually be a little bit better, which is incredible. Or he's got the upside too, all things being equal. So if he goes to a situation where he's well developed, has an injury-free run, and gets really good roles over time, where he can really be featured, well, he's got real upside to be as good, plausibly could be better. I'm not putting a cap on him. He's that guy who has the scope to really be that almost generational talent in this draft, truthfully. So, and to compare him directly to Bont, well, they're both the same height at the same age, both December birthdays. They're both those almost like basketball-esque sort of talents. And Filippo, I've seen some basketball highlights, and he can ball, so he'd probably make college if he wanted to, truth be told. But in terms of his AFL play, well, he's got the contested ball winning, and he's a clearer midfielder on a level more so even than Bont at the same age and stage. But then he's got the same sort of speed and endurance. He's got the same sort of forward of capability, forward of centre capabilities, with whether it's the marking, whether it's winning his own ball, kicking the goals from range, and really finishing some incredible plays. So he's really up there on talent with a Bont. So I do still have to consider whether I prefer Filippo to Ashcroft as the top player in this draft, because truthfully it's a case of, well, there's one guy who has a superior ceiling if all goes well, and someone else who is the really low risk, certain, incredible footballer. So they're the things I'll have to weigh up. Ultimately, it's fairly irrelevant with an Ashcroft being a father-son, and with a Filippo being someone where, look, you can get him, you don't need pick 2 or even pick 1 to get him. So it's sort of irrelevant in that respect. But yeah, look, for me, they're the top 2 players in this year's draft, despite, I guess, in the case of Filippo, popular opinion, so it seems. So, but yeah, to go down. So I'm seeing substantial value broadly within inside the top 10. So we've got Jed Buslinger, best key defender in this draft. Great interceptor, can use it well from defense. Yeah, so he projects really well. And look, he might be one of the lower, if not the lower, of these players. And I think outside the top 10, he'll be able to be secured. So he's one to certainly get excited about, and I think could represent quite a bit of value in that. Maybe it's 10 to 15 range, potentially. I could see him more likely than not landing. So, yeah, so maybe it means that there's opportunity for a club to move up if keen for a really good key defender, or one who projects to be in the long run once he develops physically. Aaron Cadman, clearly the best key forward in this draft. That's not even close. Has grown a few centimetres, but shown a great rate of improvement. And he's one where, importantly, not only does he dominate, but he's someone who really has a number of ways to take advantage of opposition key defenders, which is what makes me really confident on his talent, where he's not a one-trick pony. So, given all that, well, he projects very nicely, because when you've got that mix of production, rate of improvement, and a number of points of difference, that's a really positive outlook for a key forward over the long run. So, look, is he worth pick 1? Well, as this list shows, I don't rate him as a top, certainly 2 pick, but anywhere in that sort of 3 to 10 range, if I need a key forward, I'd be comfortable certainly picking Cadman. Next up, we've got Jai Clark. So one of the best all-round midfielders in this draft, ultimately. And I'd say even forward of centre, he's quite dangerous, even though he hasn't had much opportunity there. Just with that mix of ground level craft, but then he can also take a mark as well. So could be that sort of, maybe it's a Luke Parker equivalent in this draft. So I think he's very good. And Geelong would love to have him as the local Geelong talent, but Yeah, look, if they do want him, they might have to consider moving up because there's no certainty he makes it through to their pick. Bailey Humphrey, probably second to Sheasel in that, I guess, most damaging forward conversation. So I'm talking general forward. Just a really strong body, but then strong overhead, but then also really strong over the ball and one-on-one as well. So very dangerous, can push up through the midfield, win the footy as well. But for me, forward of centre is where he's most influential. So I rate him on that basis accordingly. Cam McKenzie, so St Kilda NGA, they'd love for him to be available at their pick, but more likely than not, probably doesn't make it through. So that's something for Saints fans to be aware of there. But good all-round mid, ultimately. So he can win it, can go on the outside, has the skills, has the movement. So yeah, he looks like a good piece. And he's shown improvement as well this year. Wasn't predicted early instead of coming into the year necessarily to be a top pick, but he's really solidified himself as that this year. So with the rate of improvement as well, that's a real positive. Harry Sheasel, best general forward for me in the draft. So if there's anyone I want inside my forward 50, Sheasel's my guy. So he's one where he just does everything. He's got the ground level craft, strong overhead, really great skills, can finish around goals, sets up teammates, but then he can push through the midfield, win his own footy, evade players. He's just a really nice piece. So I'll have to consider, he's certainly in the upper, if not at least middle range within this group. So yeah, and he's likely to go very early. He's a top 5 pick in this draft. Elijah Sardis, really good mid, can go inside, outside. Following Ashcroft, he's that next most prolific accumulator. And his special sources, not only does he have the burst of speed when you give him that space, but then additionally his loose ball winning. So whenever the ball gets loose of the contest and just gets a little bit outside, well, he's always going to be first to the ball. So that's his special source right there and what makes him certainly a top 10 talent at the very least. But more likely than not, probably top 5 is my prediction at this stage in terms of where he lands on draft day. And then you've got George Wardlaw. So obviously he's better than a pick 10. And again, quick reminder, these players within their respective tiers are not ordered. None of the players within their tiers are ordered. It's just purely alphabetically listed. So, but in my November edition or my final power rankings tier list, I suppose if you want to call it that way, I'm happy to order all these players. But yeah, with a Wardlaw, look, missed most of the season and I guess re-injuring the same hamstring really sucked ultimately. But yeah, look, strong ball winner, has a bit of a burst of speed, really impacts games defensively as well and commits himself to that side of the ball. So yeah, really good footballer. Not necessarily as productive as an Ashcroft or a Sardis, but nonetheless a very influential mid and deservedly will go top 5 on draft day. Okay, so the top 11 to 22. So I have to figure out within this range, basically, who of this group misses out. So there'll be 2 that have to miss out, and it's going to be an awfully hard call. So I'm telling you that right now. But there are 2 mature ages in this range. So that's something that is immediately very different on my draft board to what you'll see with others. So Ethan Phillips, so he was the equivalent of the rising star in the VFL with the Fothergill Round Mitchell Medal, and the last probably 15 winners of the award have been drafted into the AFL following it. So you can expect that Phillips will join an AFL list this year as the best mature age key defender in this draft. And then you've also got Casey Voss as a defender. He is eligible as a father-son for Brisbane, being the son of Michael. And is another mature ager from the Sandful. Best on ground in the Sandful v Waffle game. 2-time team of the year in the Sandful player. So we're looking at someone who's highly credentialed and, as with Phillips, still very young. So, but in the case of Voss, given he was overlooked in the mid-season draft and last year's draft, I'm not necessarily expecting him to be picked up. But for me, certainly someone within this at least top 22. He might still be in my top 20. That's something I'll have to figure out. But again, both of these guys are clearly, for me, on quality, best 22 in terms of the overall rankings. So, and I'm very confident and comfortable having them both in that range. But to go through in sequence, so again, alphabetical. So We've got Ed Allen. So he's a WA utility. He's about that, might be about a 194, 195, but super athlete. So he's got the speed endurance combination, and you can play him truly anywhere. So he could be a key position player at either end. You could play him on a wing. He's played a lot of time through the midfield this year. So, yeah, really talented footballer. One who's still very much developing and will require time, but there's substantial upside. And that's why he's in the first round conversation at the moment amongst AFL clubs and not just highly rated on my own draft board. So, yeah, so certainly one to track down some footage of and, yeah, have a look at. Harry Barnett, for me, best ruckman in this draft, bar none. And although a lot of people would be thinking, why have I also listed him as a key defender for those who have watched him? Well, to give a quick summation of Barnett's game. So he's one where through the ruck, well, he's a good tap ruckman and often grabs it out of the ruck, and he follows up very nicely as well at ground level. But in terms of key defense, what I'm looking at is, well, he's a sensational contested mark, reads it really well, clunks his mark, strong body on body. And he's also got an incredible endurance at that. But yeah, as a key defender, look, with how he reads it, and if you can read it, clunk your marks and win one-on-ones, well, he's also got the scope to be a key defender as well if certainly becoming a ruckman didn't work out for him. So he's got a lot of ability there. And as with Allen, they're the two that weren't inside my top 20 power rankings in October on ESPN, but they're two that I certainly have to give consideration to. They're both players that I've had thereabouts for a few months, and look, I just really like their games and rate them very evenly with this group here. So I've got some hard decisions to make. If either of these make it, well, who drops out? They're the things I have to really think about there. Ruben Ginby, look, he's going top 10. That's expected. So he has played in defence as well, but look, he's played his best football through the midfield for WA during the under-18 champs. So he's really been the model of consistency for WA and really strong contested ball winner. So he's one where, look, he could go maybe even as high as Gold Coast pick. So they're looking for, if they go for a mid, they're looking for someone with a bit more versatility. And with a Ginby, well, he can also play back. Who knows, maybe he could even go forward. But certainly he's been solid in defence and he's a really good mid as well. So he gives that, I guess, optionality there for any of those teams that want to pick in that sort of range onwards. So within that probably 5 to 10 range roughly is where he's expected to go at this point. But yeah, look, for me, given he hasn't really done it in the waffle, even during the under-18 champs, there were players that I consider quite a lot more influential. I haven't been able to justify including him inside my personal top 10 rankings. For a bit of insight there. But certainly as someone inside my top 22, I'm not even necessarily committed to having him definitely inside my top 20. I probably will, but I'll have to see. But he won't be up the higher end of this range, I'm not expecting at this stage, unless I really see some footage of something that really makes me think otherwise. But yeah, but he's a 11 to 22 player for me based on performance. Lewis Hayes, so younger brother of Sam, so he's a key defender. So reads it really well behind the ball, really good kick, just racks it up, basically. Will need to develop consistently, but late year birthday and rapid improver during the year. So, but yeah, his one-on-one play will really need to improve, and as will his strength, but that can come. He's just a kid, so let him develop would be what I'd be saying there. And try not to give him too many heavily defensive roles early on because he'll just get exposed early days. But for me, look, he's the second best of the young key defenders in this draft. I'm not even going to commit to saying he's definitely going to be better than Ethan Phillips. I rate them both fairly evenly, actually. So I'd have to decide out of those two who is my true second-rated key defender. Not much in it. They're just at different stages in their development. But both look potentially good for AFL play is how I'm thinking. And with a Hayes, very developable but needs the time. Elijah Hewitt, for me a little disappointing this year, though his play later in the year in WA did certainly improve. So very athletic midfielder, can win his own footy through the midfield. Look, when he gets the ball sort of I guess, the back half, not much influence. When he gets it more forward of center, that's when he does more damage, I find. So, but yeah, it's just the production wasn't quite there, nor was the consistency to really justify having him higher than I do. But yeah, on draft day, he's probably going to be that second half of the first round type pick. So I think where I rate him is probably going to be fairly consistent with where he most likely goes on draft day. So Oliver Hollins, so we've got Elijah's younger brother. So absolute endurance machine, won the 2K time trial at the combine, and he can play inside and outside, but more likely than not, I think he probably settles on a wing. So you might get maybe a Carlton around their first pick, taking a good look at him. And around that sort of range, I could justify having him. He's probably in that sort of upper end of this group, if I had to sort of say right now. Ollie Houghton, so yeah, is really, I could call him a utility, where he can really impact games, whether it's forward, midfield, or back, for that matter. So really talented, good athlete, has the skills, can find the footy, so, and also hit the scoreboard when he wants to as well. So really good talent. His dad also played at AFL level, but not father-son eligible. You've got Henry Huswaite. So people have sort of spoken about him doing other things, but for me, he's just a pure inside mid. I love him around stoppages, winning first possession, absolute contested ball winning machine. Great distributor, does well by hand, and is that tall mid who still has room to develop physically. It's not like he's a really strong, hulking guy yet. So with that scope to develop physically as well, he can really become a machine of a inside ball winner. So yeah, he could be something like the equivalent of, not saying he's going to be as good, but that Patrick Cripps style. So yeah, one to certainly be aware of. And look, I think he's one where there's even the scope that he drops into the second round. So if he can be picked up in the second round, I love the risk to reward opportunity right there with a Henry Huswaite. So yeah, that's something to watch out for. But really liked his development, particularly as a sort of tall ball winning mid during the year. I thought that was absolutely his role, and one that he can be terrific at in the long run as that distributor who just sort of racks it up and wins it inside. So Darcy Jones, so we're looking here at a speedy outside type. So he's only that 175 centimeters, but the way he plays, he's an absolute beauty. So fastest in this draft, he broke the combine record for agility, and it shows in game. There's no one with ball in hand that's as quick as Jones is in game. In terms of that sheer run and dare with ball in hand, he's an absolute weapon. He had a game in the Waffle Colts where he went for 40 plus disposals, so he can rack it up. And additionally, even though he's small, during the under-18 champs, he was winning a good percentage contested as well, which really sort of appeals to me. So if you're getting someone who can really, I guess, rack it up and win it contested and at high volume, but then you play a high impact per possession game, well, that translates to AFL play. It's those where they've got the weapons, but not necessarily able to find it at quantity or win their own ball. They're the ones I find that really slip up. So I'm really optimistic about Jones, and I think he's worth a first round pick, honestly, even if it is maybe more so at the latter end rather than earlier. So yeah, I think he'll probably remain inside my top 20, albeit only just. But yeah, we'll have to see where he goes on draft day. He's probably a top 30 pick for a quick feel as to where he's probably rated by clubs. But yeah, I think he's a genuine on quality, as I said, first rounder. So watch out for Jones. Jacob Constanti, in terms of those sort of smaller forwards, I think he's really about as good as they come in this draft. So you can think of him as your Jamie Elliott equivalent, where just really dangerous, hits the scoreboard, good overhead, good at ground level, just a really good piece. And as I was saying before, Ethan Phillips, so incredible interceptor. He led the VFL in marks, intercept possessions, intercept marks. Had pretty good contested mark numbers as well, albeit didn't lead the comp in contested marks. So that's the sort of footballer you're looking at there, where incredible interceptor, but he's also a really strong body who's competitive one-on-one as well. So it's not like he just reads it and intercepts. He can also really, I guess, do a good job one-on-one. So yeah, I really rate his prospects, and yeah, hopefully we see him feature somewhere in the first half of the draft. I think he'd be thoroughly deserving, and at the moment, he's my pick to be the first mature age player picked in this year's draft. So, and I've got a fairly good history with mature ages as well. Lecalier, who I'm not really aware of anyone else rating inside their top 20. I said this guy's top 20 on quality, and it turned out GWS agreed with me in picking him top 20. So, yeah, we'll have to see with Ethan Phillips if someone rates him as highly in clubland as I do, but I'm thinking he's probably more of a second rounder in terms of where he's more likely to feature, would be my prediction at this stage. And then Casey Voss, as I was saying, so he's a ready-to-go defender, can fit into any best 22. Just, yeah, really good piece. Intercepts really well, competitive, great kick, just one of those really smart footballers. So, yeah, there's really no better in the state leagues outside the AFL in terms of general defenders. He's just a plug and play. You can just fit him into your defense. So any club that's a little bit inadequate in defense, if you're overlooking Casey Voss, well, you're just not paying attention to the state leagues ultimately. Okay, so in the 23 to 45 range. So Angus Baker, he might not even nominate for the draft. So, but yeah, he's an ACT boy, and yeah, is that sort of medium intercepting defender, good ball user from defense. He's a plug and play type who can just go into an AFL club and get games immediately. So, yeah, he's played a bit of VFL. He was dominant in the NEFL previously as well. So, at every level he plays, he's just too good, and he needs to get an AFL opportunity. But of course, is there the AFL interest? Well, none that I'm aware of, and it's a real shame. He's a player, as with so many in generations past, who clubs just haven't really, I guess, drafted, and it's a real loss to the competition because he's AFL standard. So he's one where, given he's still young enough, I've got him there again. But yeah, we'll just have to see. Hopefully a club is smart enough just to approach him and say, hey, we want you on our list. We think you're a best 22 player. If so, then I think they'll be duly rewarded. Harry Boyd, so for me, best mature age ruckman in this draft. Really dominated in the SANFL this year. And for a club like, maybe it's say a Collingwood who are a bit thin through the ruck, well, Boyd is someone where he could compete for a number one ruck spot potentially. So he is that sort of slightly undersized ruck in terms of he's a sub 200 centimetre, but he's a strong body and he'll rack it up, strong mark, skills are fine. So yeah, he's one that I really like as a mature age ruck, and he's one where maybe he's in the mix. We'll have to see, but if he is picked, it won't be early. Jackson Binns, so he's an elite endurance running outside type, racks it up, but he can also go forward and hit the scoreboard as well. So yeah, good piece, very developable. Adam D'Aloia, absolutely dominant ball winning mid. In terms of the contested stuff, in terms of the tackling, brings the pressure. He has all those components to his game. Probably a bit vanilla, a lot of people would say. Doesn't have that X factor necessarily, doesn't break games open. Really just does those little things sort of in and under and around contests that are so valuable. So, yeah, look, he might not go in the sort of first half of the draft, but he's one where certainly he's very draftable, and I would say deserves drafting at the very least. So if he isn't, well, yeah, clubs probably should, I guess, rethink their drafting. Because, yeah, if you're after a really competitive mid, yeah, D'Aloia is fantastic. It was, of course, the SA best player during the under-18 champs, and clearly the most consistent of their mids over the games. Charlie Clark, really quick, really damaging small forward. So anyone looking for that crumbing forward, he's one that from the second round onwards, I would say is very much appropriate for consideration. You've got Alwyn Davey Jr., so Essendon father-son, so he's officially nominated Essendon. So they've got first opportunity to match bids, and I strongly expect they will, given their small forward deficiencies. But yeah, basically he can go both forward and mid, so he can play a bit higher up the field than his dad, and probably has a bit more sort of capability to accumulate, but has a lot of the same magic around goal and can pressure as well. So, but yeah, good skills. Probably just needs to develop that more contested edge if I was to give a quick critique on his game. But yeah, deserves to be in this range thoroughly. And could be a first round pick, I'll also add. So if he is bid on, it'd be sort of late, sort of first round. If not, he'll go second round. That's where you can expect a bid, but he'll certainly be bid on. Jacob Dawson, so a previous Gold Coast player. When he was with the Suns, he was used in defence. Back in the Neefle days, that is. But yeah, look, he's played really good football this year as a mid. So yeah, just really good VFL mid, dominant in terms of that ball-winning accumulation. You really want him around stoppages. So if you want that immediate sort of really good mid, he's a guy. And yeah, look, given he's a Queenslander and he was playing footy in Queensland again this year, well, for a Gold Coast, if they're looking for another mid, their midfield's looking pretty good now, admittedly. But if hypothetically they wanted another mid, he'd be great. Or any of the other clubs for that matter, I'm sure he'd be pretty keen to get back into the AFL system, because ultimately he's a really good footballer and ready for another AFL opportunity the way he's playing, just with the sheer dominance. So we've got Braden George. So, of course, injuries have really sort of hurt him and he's missed time as a result. But, yeah, look, really explosive, athletic, strong forward. He's been hitting the scoreboard really well when he has been out there, but he does need to rack up more of the footy to show that he has scope beyond just being a forward and one who can hit the scoreboard. So we'll have to see how he rebounds from injury, but ultimately this is the range I'd be more comfortable picking him in. But look, he could be considered as soon as sort of the late first round. If not, he's a second rounder. So, yeah. Cooper Harvey. So North Melbourne fans will be surely excited seeing me list him in this range. But, of course, son of Brent. And he's not as short as his father either. So he's about that. Top of mind, he'd be about that 180. So he's not like a super short type. But look, the difference between he and his dad. So he's not the same sort of athletic, I guess, freak that his dad was. He doesn't have that same motor, doesn't have the same sort of speed. But really strong ball-winning mid. Does have some power, really good fend-offs. And yeah, look, he does most things pretty well. He has the ball winning, has the skills. He can even go forward and hit the scoreboard as well. So, yeah, there's a lot that I really like with Cooper Harvey. I think he's a very developable piece. So, North Melbourne will be lucky to have him, and I think he will attract a bid at some point. But I think it will be sort of a bid in a range where, yeah, look, I can't see him, say, attracting a first round bid. I don't think that's realistic. And hopefully the bid comes somewhere outside the top 30 would be North Melbourne's hope there anyway. And it could well go quite a bit later in the draft. We'll have to see. Given the sort of fairly limited exposure this year, it does make his range a little bit less clear. But like him a lot. Matthew Jefferson, so he's one where he could go as high as top 10 even. So he's going first round as the expectation. And look, really athletic, goal-kicking forward, so doesn't need a lot of it to hit the scoreboard heavily. For me, and this is something where I look at his game a little bit differently, I think he would be a better key defender than a key forward. So as a key forward, I worry, will he be able to find enough of the footy at AFL level to be relevant? Can he be committed enough defensively? And will he have enough tricks ultimately? So really good athlete, good overhead, has those sort of weapons, but yeah, look, does he work hard enough? We'll have to see. But as a key defender, what I like is being that athletic sort of marking type. I think there's scope behind the ball that he could be a piece. So even though I've got some level of skepticism of him as a key forward, which is a differing opinion to what clubs believe, I do think he would make a better key defender than key forward. So yeah, that's something that I would say be mindful of there. But yeah, personal opinion, we'll have to see. But yeah, look, I think he's one where he could be a bit of a trap early on, just because I'm not confident in his play as a key forward. Doesn't have enough production. Maybe not quite the rate of improvement either, although he's had some big games as well, and a few injuries as well, which have sort of niggled him and nagged him a bit as well. Other players in this range that are interesting. So you've got Liam Jones. So before basically he had his 1 year off by choice, I guess you could say. So coming out of retirement, we'll have to see whether he's sort of still able to play how he was. But certainly for Carlton in that final year, he was elite one-on-one, and then he led the competition in intercept marks, and he was a contested marking beast behind the ball. So if he can get back to that standard of play, well, he thoroughly deserves to be in this range. And I'm certainly not putting a cap on how many years he can continue playing good footy either. So he could well have another good 3 or 4 productive years in front of him. So we'll have to see, but great fit for the Bulldogs and really improves them quite meaningfully. So you've got Isaac Keeler, so talented key forward / ruck. He is an Adelaide Next Gen Academy, but for me, he plays his best footy as a forward. Just with that athleticism, really good ground level craft in particular, but can push up the field, work hard, and really influential for each touch is how I sort of look at his game. But can play those relieving minutes through the ruck. So he's one where he's ideally suited alongside a clear number one ruck, and he can just play those minutes where he can play that, whether it's 15-20% ruck, and then just to get him a few touches, a bit more confidence, and then he pushes forward and impacts. That's sort of how I see his game. But he's that Buddy-esque, where he's that sort of height, has a few of those same or similar types of attributes, but obviously he's not Buddy and has a lot of work to do if he wants to get anywhere near that territory. But look, you put him on a good team and he's very developable, is how I feel with Keeler. I have got Noah Long, so he's one where he's got versatility across a few spots. I like him probably more as a forward than a mid, but has the speed. He can rack up the footy and hit the scoreboard as well. So for me, well suited across probably half forward. He could possibly rotate through the mid, but for me, more half forward is his spot. Jaden Magor, so played really good footy, particularly in the latter parts of the year in SA, where look, he can hit the scoreboard really heavily. He's had hauls of, I think it was like 5 or 6 goals in different games. But then he had another one where he probably got something like top of mind 40 disposals in a game. So he can rack it up too when he pushes up through the midfield. So really damaging piece. So we'll have to see where he goes. He's one where he could be a bit of a sleeper, where if he drops, say, certainly outside the top 40, I would say, represents incredible value. Even outside the top 30, I'd be thinking, yeah, he could represent value. Because if you look at this range, so this is the 23 to 45. Look, for me, he's certainly clear top 40, and I'll have to see for my final, I guess, go over this, where he would be within this range. But I really like Magor. I think there's, good chances for him to develop. Tom McCallum. So for me, he's the best Tasmanian prospect. He won't be the first picked Tasmanian in this draft, but really good key defender. So reads it really well, intercepts well, strong one-on-one, can use it well. Out of the general defenders, and he's almost tall enough to be a key defender. He plays like a key defender. So he could be something like, say, that third tall. But yeah, really like his game. If I'm after that type, he's one where, I don't know, maybe it's from pick 40 onwards, I think he represents pretty good value. Connor McKenna, so coming out of retirement, we'll have to see. Certainly, does he come out of retirement to join a club? If he joins Geelong, well, that's scary with the sort of drive he could generate across half back. But certainly before he retired, well, for me at least, he was the best rebounder in the comp. So at that aspect specifically, so I'm talking the combination of both the kick and the run. Having both of those ingredients on a level where I just liked it more than anyone else in the comp. Because he had the speed, used it, but then he had the skills and the hurt factor where he didn't really miss targets. He was a great user. So, just really damaging footballer and rebounder. So, hopefully for the benefit of the AFL, he does make a comeback because he's a really good footballer. Anthony Munkara, so Essendon NGA. So limited exposure, only a brief taste, probably a couple of games in SA, and then brief taste sort of during the under-18 champs. I think it was in the academy game as well against Collingwood he appeared as well. And look, he's played pretty well when he has appeared, but yeah, with the limited exposure, it's hard to rate him higher than he is now. So Essendon will be hoping that a pick outside the top 40 comes for him, because then they can match bids. And of course, they'd love to add someone with his athletic talent, marking talent, goal-kicking prowess they're the sort of things you can expect. So he's a good complement to someone like an Alwyn Davey and Jaden Davey, who they're expected most likely to get as a rookie. Could attract a bid late, but I'd say probably Jaden, who's Alwyn's twin, will be bid on more so, or looked at more so as a rookie. So you've got Max Pescud. So he's one where mature age, he's been on my radar for a number of years. Really good forward. He can push up onto a wing as well, but a really talented player around goal. So athletic, strong mark, good at ground level, good finisher around goal, really plays a high impact per possession game. So he's one where it's worth watching some of his VFL games, because for me, he's an AFL talent and he just hasn't had that opportunity. So I think Gold Coast completely missed out on him as a academy player. They should have picked him up a number of years ago now. And look, they could still bring him in now. But yeah, I think with a Pescud, look, if he's available late draft, rookie draft, I think he represents quite significant value and can really be a piece to bring a bit more X factor and excitement to a front half, I would say. Bailey Rogers, look, he's one of the most ready, mature ages and best players outside the AFL. So he was the Sandover medalist in 2021, so best player in the waffle. And so he's good both mid-forward. So he can win it through the midfield, good skills, but can go forward, take a grab, hit the scoreboard. Again, has the skills sort of forward to centre to hit those targets. So look, he's a natural fit into a midfield rotation. So it doesn't have to be a full-time mid, which is part of the appeal for me with a Rogers. I've got Harry Rouston, so GWS Academy. So really good mid. So, and look, with some of their mids going out, look, here's someone where absolutely GWS need to be adding him to their group. But yeah, look, every time I've seen him play, he's played really good footy, particularly during the under-18 champs. I thought he was a really important piece for the Allies, and really, for me, their best and most consistent piece over each of their games. Did hit the scoreboard as well, which was promising, good mark, but it's really that sort of inside stuff. So the contested stuff, pretty good tackler as well, so works pretty hard both ways. So yeah, I think he's a good piece. Kobe Ryan, really underrated player and not a certain pick, which is incredible for me. He's been playing Sandford League level, playing good footy there. What probably hurt him was his under-18 champs, where he wasn't really getting those shots as a inside mid. It was only from memory the last game where he played as an inside mid, and he was really influential actually during that game. But for me, look, he's an underrated player, and if he makes it into the late and rookie territory, gee whiz, I would be very quick. If I need a good ball winning mid, I'd be looking at Kobe Ryan to pick him up right there. Mitch Sibkowski, so another good mid. He probably goes, maybe it's late first, maybe it's somewhere in the second round, but a really good all-rounder, probably by hand overall the best distributor in this draft. That's his special sauce. But yeah, look, pretty good athlete, strong enough body, can win his own footy, does most things pretty well as a mid. Josh Weddle, so he's one where he's actually in the first round mix, although I probably have him sort of in the lower end of this range to be honest with you, but really good one-on-one defender, and he's not quite that key defense height, he's that 190 or so, but what really I like with Weddle, although he's not a good kick, he does have a real burst of speed that really, each time he sort of bursts, really sort of catches me by surprise. So that's sort of more how he impacts games, where he can intercept, win his one-on-ones, and can run a bit as well. So that's sort of how he goes about his business. Then I've got the 46 to 60 range. So here I've got the delisted free agent, Jed Anderson. So I suspect part of that delisting was the Aliston Clarkson effect. So whether it's Anderson not wanting to play for Clarkson, or whether it's Clarkson not wanting Anderson as part of his list, I'm not sure which way that is. But look, for me with Anderson, he's still an AFL caliber mid. So for any club looking for someone who on a per minute basis can really rack it up and can also pressure and do those sorts of things, he can win his own ball. I think he could still be a productive piece for a team that wants him. So yeah, of course, what hopefully you've picked up already is that This draft board doesn't just list the best under 18 prospects in the country, but also I've got a fair number of mature ages and also some delisted free agents. So I really wanted to give all of them representation to really show in context, okay, this is where everyone fits. So it's like last year, I had Tyson Stengel. I believe I had him inside my top 40. So even though he was a delisted free agent, I thought he was a top 40 player. And I said, look, if he's picked by Geelong, he's going to be a gun. Didn't expect all Australian good, but that sort of thing happens. So I do want to give those delisted free agents credit where it's due as well, because there's some where I do believe there's still got capability. So I do want to give that acknowledgement where appropriate. Luke Bailey, so he came on a bit sort of later in the year, but yeah, look, really good ball winning mid, can distribute as well. Yeah, it's just really the inside stuff that's his strong suit. Kobe Burgill, yeah, look, he's one where he's got some weapons on the outside mostly, but he can go forward and hit the scoreboard as well. So has some speed, good skills. Yeah, does a lot of good things, and I'm expecting he probably actually goes in the second round. So I think he goes quite a lot earlier than this, and you'll find with a lot of the players that I'm rating quite a bit lower than they're likely to feature on draft day. But for me, this being my power rankings, I don't care where they're going on draft day. This is how I personally rate them. So if players are expected to go a lot earlier, well, then they're basically players that I'd be passing up in favor of those that I feel represent better value of those available. And the next two, or actually the next three, I could say really fit in that basket quite clearly. So Lachie Cowan is widely considered to be Tasmania's best prospect this year, and he's a good rebounding defender. So he can generate a lot of drive, in particular by foot, but with a bit of run as well, and really racked it up in the NAB League this year. So found him disappointing during the under-18 champs, and that hurts his ranking. But yeah, look, he's a good footballer, but this is just where I rate him. So he's one where he could be a first-round pick on draft day. If not, he'd be early second as the expectation there. So as you can tell by being in the 46 to 60 range, my rating does not correlate with how clubs see him. Same story with Jasper Fletcher, who's a Brisbane father-son. So personally, I don't rate him nearly as highly as he's going to feature. He's probably going to attract a first-round bid on draft day, as that really sort of damaging outside mid, can go across half back as well. Has the skills, has the speed, a real sort of outside penetrator. But for me, look, I just can't justify having him that early. He can win a little bit of his own ball as well. But for me, I at least personally rate him in the 46 to 60 range. I could make an argument he's the tier above, but in no scenario do I consider him a top at least 22 player. I wouldn't consider him for that range at all. So there's others that, for me at least, have been better performed and more influential towards winning on a more consistent basis. So, yeah, that's my view there. Max Grzuski, so he's one where he's that in-between key position / I don't know, third tall, if you want to call it that. So, yeah, you can play him at either end, and look, he's been quite good when he's been forward, and he's been able to bob up, hit the scoreboard. Real high flyer, really athletic marking type. But being that athletic marking type, my view is he's best suited in defence. So as a forward, my view is he won't find or win enough of the footy to be a relevant forward. I don't think he'd have a career there in the long run. Best case scenario would be something like a Mason Wood, perhaps, if he was to remain forward. But in defence, that's where I think he could be a weapon. So I'd be looking to develop him along the lines of maybe it's a Jeremy Howe type, where just exploit that leaping ability, exploit his marking capabilities. He can really fly, and even if you try and knock him around in the air, he can still take a grab. So that's how I would be utilising him. And if he is used that way, he can be better than a top 45 player in this draft. So, but I do suspect that more likely than not, he'll be probably used as a forward and won't, as a result, develop as well as he could. It's a bit like my view a few years ago with Ollie Henry, which still holds firm, where he was drafted as a forward, played as a forward for Collingwood, wasn't consistent enough there, wasn't able to pressure or do enough at ground level. I see Grzuski as one and the same. If a Henry has moved into defence, I think instantly he's a best 22 player for a Geelong now that he's moved there, or at least more likely to be. And I sort of see Grzycki the same way, where put him back, he's got a good chance to become a consistent player, but we'll have to see. Matthew Hamilman, so mature age, key forward. Look, he's made the decision this year not to be part of the VFL, so he's just played in Queensland this year. But yeah, look, he's still outside the AFL, one of the absolute premier ready-made key forwards. So for a club that needs another key forward who can just sort of plug and play, mostly as that sort of deeper option. Yeah, Hamilman's a good one. He's around that 2 meters, athletic, good mark. He could be that Ben Brown style, I guess, to put it that way. So that's the sort of output, more like a past prime Ben Brown is sort of more the output you'll get from a Hamilman, would be my thinking. Tyler Keitel, he was one where when Brody Myercheck was drafted, really Keitel was roughly on par with him. I know different competition, Myercheck being drafted out of the VFL, Keitel out of the Waffle never got drafted, but he's that same sort of output guy where he's probably the best key forward outside the AFL. Could be slightly edging Hamilton, but they're about on par roughly as those sort of mid-20s ready to go key forwards. So yeah, they're two where certainly if I needed one just for the short to medium term, I'd feel they suffice as options if I'm struggling. Anthony McDonald-Tipungwuti, look, obviously this year when he played a few games in the VFL, completely out of shape, needs to put the work into his body, and I suspect his conditioning hasn't improved since. So basically, look, if he wants another shot at AFL level, he needs to get into condition, but if he does, well, he's one of the most influential small forwards in the comp, just with the sheer pressure that he applies. Great ball user and hits the scoreboard as well. So when he's up and going, really love his game, and I'm acknowledging him accordingly by including him on this list, but would need to get into condition to be worthy of rating in this range. So one I'd be considering for a list position, certainly, assuming he showed the necessary commitment to his conditioning and motivation to come back. Rhett Montgomery, so Sandful, mature age defender, intercepts pretty well, uses it fine from defense, can rebound a bit, competitive enough. So he's one where, I'd be open to considering him, probably more late or rookie draft realistically, but he's one of the better, mature ages available in this draft, and particularly in defense. And there's a good long history of some of the better general defenders at AFL level coming from the state league. So whether it's a Tom Stewart, whether it's a Luke Ryan, just for a couple top of mind, there's plenty of others as well that have developed from there. Jeremy Howell, though he was drafted as a forward, he was a mature ager from Tassie. So you get those types of names that can be really good general defenders. And yeah, I wouldn't be putting anything against Montgomery from potentially being another, not that level, but another one who can be a piece at AFL level. So I'd be giving that genuine consideration there. Okay, so we've got Jacob Ryan. So he's one where, look, I almost feel bad having him this low. I could almost consider putting him up a group, but basically really good defender, reasonably tall, so that sort of probably around 190 centimeters or so, but basically he does everything well. Rebounds well, he can intercept, competitive enough one-on-ones. So, if you're looking for that sort of, I guess, general defender who does most things pretty well, Jacob Ryan is a good bet. And he was pretty consistent for SA during the under-18 champs. And again, his play in the Sandful as well, again, really good. So he's draftable. One of my favourite mature age key defenders, Blake Slenslog. So he was a former Geelong Category B rookie and had a really good 2021 year, but this year he sort of missed the first half or so of the season with injury and then came back. Wasn't quite in sort of the condition that he was last year on return, so he wasn't quite able to recapture that same level. But again, look, with a Slenslog, I think he's got that chance to be a key defender for an AFL club if given the chance. So I'm sticking by my convictions from last year and, again, including him on this list again this year, albeit quite a bit lower given another year's past. Okay, Tom Scully. So, really started the year on fire in the Sandful under-18s, where the scoreboard impact, contested marking, huge numbers. But then second half of the year, he dropped off completely. So, does have a late-ish year birthday, so November birthday. And look, I think just opposition clubs really sort of almost figured him out, started playing taller key defenders on him who were more equipped and well suited to defending him. And yeah, look, whether it was his one game during the under 18 champs, whether it was just the second half of the year in the Sandful under 18s, look, he just wasn't as dominant. So that's why he's dropped all the way down my draft board. But yeah, look, whenever you've got a 200 centimeter plus key forward who can take a grab and hit the scoreboard out of the junior ranks, and they're among that, I guess, younger end of the draft, being a November born prospect, well, there's scope to develop. So in the late to rookie range, I do think Scully is appropriate for selection, or certainly at least consideration. So Caleb Smith, really good rebounding defender from the Waffle under 18s or the Waffle Colts. Has the speed, really good ball user. He's that, you could call it Sam Doherty style guy. But of course, given he didn't appear during the under 18 champs and has missed time, well, he's not someone who necessarily everyone knows and rates. But for me, I think he's getting drafted, and he could be a first half of draft selection. So from that, probably, let's call it 25 onwards point, look out for Smith as a probable selection, I would be saying. James Van Ness, really good key defender. Liked him last year, like him again this year. This is his draft year, but really strongly built. Quite surprising, actually, how good he did in the draft combine in the leaping tests. So he's got the leap as well. He's a good interceptor, but yeah, strong one-on-one. Doesn't lose too many one-on-one contests. So when you've got that combination of the one-on-one prowess and you can intercept and take those intercept grabs, and he uses it quite well as well from defense, I'll give him that credit too. Really clean and reliable ball user. So yeah, Van Ness is a draftable key defender, and from that mid-draft range onwards, I feel is appropriate for selection. Okay, so moving into the 61 to 80 range. So Jackson Broadbent coming into the year was considered a highly probable first round pick, but yeah, just hasn't developed this year, which is a shame. Does have a December birthday, so there's still a lot of time to go. And look, he has put on some weight, but yeah, just hasn't impacted games as expected, unfortunately. But yeah, think of him as your mobile ruckman with potentially some scope to develop there too. But yeah, look, given others were more dominant, he has to drop down. He hasn't really impressed to a level where he projects necessarily as an AFL level guy. But look, if he's there as a rookie and you're looking for a project ruck, I think he's pretty suitable for selection. Taj Campbell-Farrell, yeah, good ball winning mid, had a really good year, but has missed some time with injury as well. But in this range, if he's there sort of late rookie, he's one of those mids that you could consider as one of the certainly best performed in this draft. Ted Clohese, so Geelong NGA, for me, plays his best footy as a mid, but he has also played sort of in defence and up forward a bit as well. But really committed ball winner, committed to providing pressure and tackling. So in terms of tackles and pressure acts, he'd be among the highest and best in this draft. So really good two-way player, but wins a high percentage contested as well. So yeah, he's one of those, I guess you could call it champion data darlings, if you want to call it that. But yeah, really rate him, and I feel he deserves to be picked. If not, I'd probably pick him late. So I think he's worth one of Geelong's late picks. But if not, well, if he gets through into the rookie draft, brilliant, and I would be picking him as a rookie. I think he'd provide great value for Geelong there. And look, it's a great situation to be going to, particularly with a midfield that is very experienced and will, in a few years' time, have some vacancies. So that'd be a great situation for him to go to. But yeah, developable given he's got those traits as that really competitive type. Blake Drury, look, you can call him a utility, but for me, he's played his best footy as a crumbing forward. I think that's his spot. So yeah, if I'm after a crumbing forward, look, he could go as early as the second round. So But if he drops beyond that, then if you're after a coming forward, he's one where I'd be saying give him consideration. He's had a pretty good year and he's got some talent as that crummer. Billy Dowling, look, he's been racking up huge numbers in the Sandful under 18s, huge numbers. So racks it up. He'll get his 30 plus touches, but then he hits the scoreboard as well. So he's good for more than a goal a game, and he'll get you his 30 touches as well. So he had I think it was at least one 40 plus touch game. Had a few games where he had quite a few goals. So the thing that I find disappointing with Dowling is, and look, he can play either inside or outside mid, but for me, it's just he can't read the ball in flight, which really impacts his marking. So you can kick to him and then he'll just sort of miss it. He'll misread what's happening in the air and then he won't sort of get the mark. So there's a few minor frustrations in that sense, which is why I don't have him rated higher despite his really incredible production. So but yeah, look, he's one where certainly based on how well performed he is, he needs to be drafted. So, and I think for me, in that sort of late to rookie region is the appropriate spot for him. Jake Florinka, so he obviously just played the one game for West Coast as that, I guess, top-up player, but he was the best player for West Coast in that game. So he led them in contested possessions and really looked fantastic at the level. So injury sort of, I guess, restricted his second half to the season and really, I guess, meant that was over. But look, as that sort of, I guess, mid-20s if you're looking for someone who's ready-made and can just plug and play if you want a ball winner, well, Florinka's a real goer. So, I'd certainly be open to considering him, and that's why he's in this range, because he has proven, unlike pretty much anyone on this list, that he can, at AFL level, stack up and play really good footy, even with one game with no preparation. So that really speaks to how capable he is. Phoenix Foster, so he's one where he's played as a key forward and ruck this year, but for me, again, it's just looking at his attributes, he's a natural key defender. So why I say that is, well, you've got a strong contested marking guy who reads the ball beautifully in the air, so that translates to key defense play. And strong one-on-one, good athlete, good size, so as that almost ruck height type, but really good leaper as well. So with those weapons, he's a natural key defender. But of course has gone forward, hit the scoreboard, clung to marks. Through the ruck, he's been competitive enough too. So they're the options you get with him. But yeah, for me, if I draft him, I'm developing him as a key defender. And I think he's got a chance there. Whereas in the other positions, I'm not sure he's quite good enough to make it. Harvey Gallagher, so overager. He's played forward, he's played mid, but later in the year he developed in defense and really, I guess, as that rebounding defender, became really good. His intercept marking, incredible. Weirdly, just the amount of intercept marks he takes across half forward is phenomenal, but then he's got the skills as well. So, really good overager and had a phenomenal NAB league season, particularly the second half. I thought he was particularly terrific. So very draftable for me, and again in that sort of late rookie region, very suitable. Sam Gilbey, intercept marking sort of medium defender. He'll go earlier than this on draft day. I'd be surprised if he doesn't go inside the top 50 at least. But yeah, this is where I rate him. He has had his injuries which have impacted, but that's the spot I've got him. Harry Lemmy, so coming into the year, he was one of the players in the pick one mix. So, and what should also be noted is I'm not giving him credit as a key forward. I'm just calling him a forward. The reason being a bit like Tom Lynch back in his Adelaide days, where how Lemmy plays his best footy is just that lead up forward, where he's got that elite endurance and look, he can lead up at the footy, but that's all he can do. So, given his limitations, I can't sort of justify even calling him a key forward. I know he's nearly 2 meters or around that sort of 2 meter mark, but he doesn't play like a key forward, doesn't show any of those attributes. And he hasn't really shown those other tricks either. So it's been a disappointing season where he hasn't improved from where he was at last year, which is disappointing, and just hasn't produced either. You look at him during the under-18 champs, well, he was invisible in all 3 of his games. So you can add up all his stats from all 3 games, you put him into one, and it's like, well, he had a disappointing game. Well, no, that was what he accumulated across all 3 games combined. So, just invisible there, inconsistent in SA as well across the various levels he was playing. So, it just wasn't great this year ultimately. Nick Madden, really aggressive ruckman in that sort of Shane Mumford style. Reminds me a bit of actually Braden Crosley from a few years ago, but just that really sort of strong, big-bodied type, maybe even a Braden Pruce. So he's that 204 centimeter, 112 keg. So he's a big boy, but throws around his body and impacts games. Earlier in the year, I had him rated quite a lot higher, but I have upon, I guess, or at the time of the under-18 champs, just seeing him beaten by too many players, that really took a lot of the shine off, where if you're that much physically bigger than everyone, you need to be beating them or there's a problem. So, look, given that, I can't justify Madden earlier than this range, but look, if there's a bid late in the draft or if GWS can get him as a rookie, by all means, get him as a rookie. That'd be completely fine. But if a bid came, say, in the top 50, I wouldn't be matching bids on Madden personally. So, but personal opinion, others will disagree. But I do love the physicality that he plays with and how he throws around his body. Just really sort of impacts, follows up really well, can take the odd grab. So he does have some attributes that are developable. Jed Hagen, look, is a small utility you can think of him as. So good skills, does have a bit of a burst of speed too, but you can put him anywhere. So undecided his best position. Is it in defence? Is it up forward? Can do a bit of any of that really. So, one of the more accomplished juniors where it wasn't just this year that he's been good. He's been good across a number of years, but I guess my knock and why I probably have him lower than a lot of others will is look, he just hasn't improved on that level I'd expect of someone who has had such a strong junior career. So I really do expect that rate of development to be up. But being a smaller type, it's probably unlikely if he's not improving this year to the same level of others that he probably doesn't have as much improvement left. So I did have to give that consideration accordingly. So Max Noble, so Trent is his dad, so former AFL footballer. With Noble, look, he's a late developer, which is what helps him make my list. So he's around a 206 centimeters. Earlier in the year, he was probably a 203, 204, so still growing. And if you're that sort of height, well, that's really exciting. What I like about him most is how he reads the play. So he can drop behind the ball, take intercept marks. That's his go. But look, he can be clumsy at time, very much a development project, still very skinny. So he's one where, look, if I was picking him, I'd be only really considering him as a rookie, honestly, and he'd just be sort of that development project you'd have to be willing to invest a lot of years in to get up to an AFL standard. So think about your Max Reeves types. So that's roughly how I view a Noble at this point in time. But I do think he probably goes national draft. And look, he could actually go around that midpoint, which is, again, earlier than I'd be willing to go. But that's all right. That's up to clubs to determine where they rate particular players. Tom Phillips, of course, former Collingwood player, had sort of his couple of years with Hawthorn. Didn't really work out there, couldn't become a regular. Hawthorn really wanted to prioritise youth, so that happened. Look, still an elite endurance runner, can still rack it up and can still kick a few goals across sort of a wing. So for any club looking for someone across a wing who can immediately perform and fit in at AFL level, well, Phillips is, for me, perfectly fine. So not necessarily as damaging or as skilled as some other players at his position, but I personally believe he's a piece. So, and can still fit in for AFL purposes on a club list. So I haven't given up on his career by any means. I think there's a few clubs that could still potentially use him. Caleb Poulter, seeing him delisted after 2 years for me is staggering. So, and it just seems to be a case of, well, Craig McRae just doesn't rate him as a player, which is unfortunate. It seems like McRae, and this is the vibe I get, he seems to rate guys who are strong in terms of the contested side of the game, but then also in terms of the tackling and pressure. And they're the aspects that Poulter isn't quite as strong as you'd like. But looking at his game, well, he's about a 193 centimetre midfielder. So you're not expecting someone to be an immediate performer, but he's actually been able to rack it up and do some good things. Really good athlete for that height. Skills are perfectly fine. Can even take some marks here and there. So, and look, you could even consider putting him whether it's forward or back as well. But look, he's played to date his best footy probably on a wing. And yeah, if I'm after a bit more height on a wing and someone where I don't need immediate performance, if I'm just looking for someone who is all right for now but has the scope to continue developing, that's the sort of situation where I'd be saying a Poulter could be someone to consider. So, yeah, I haven't given up on him as a prospect, and I hope that he's still continuing to put his best foot forward and present as an AFL prospect, because I do think he is someone with the scope to develop into an AFL footballer and someone who could be potentially a regular for a club one day. And then Liam Stocker, so a former first round pick, and of course someone who Carlton famously traded up to secure. So, yeah, look, with Carlton, it's just been unfortunate that they've really limited him to playing in defence. So as a junior, he played his best football as a midfielder, as that really sort of strong-bodied, ball-winning mid, really good in terms of the tackling and pressure. But yeah, ultimately, he was really restricted to playing in defence. So really being asked to play an accountable lockdown role a lot of the time, it just hasn't really suited him as much, I would say. So yeah, if I'm after a role-playing mid who can also fit in defence, I think a Stocker is worthwhile. So he could fit a system, maybe it's a Richmond-type system, he could easily become a role player. Or alternatively for a club, maybe it's an Essendon perhaps, where they're lacking those mids that work hard both ways or really commit themselves defensively. Well, I'd be looking at it as a Stocker as a point of contrast, I guess you could say, for that type of team. So I do think there are certain situations where there's scope, and I haven't discounted him as a possible AFL player. Luke Sullivan, so the Bulldogs have been really good in developing players through their system, and honestly I think Sullivan is another where he's got AFL scope. So yeah, just a really good, he's got the ball winning capabilities, but he can hit the scoreboard. He's a good athlete, uses it well, so he's got a lot going for him. And even though he's in that sort of mid-20s range, well, yeah, look, if a club really wants that sort of immediate mid, I think he's a definite possible to consider as probably more so a rookie. I don't think there'll be much interest in him, but I think his play is on a level where those who have actually bothered to watch the VFL and Footscray this year, well, I think he's been a good piece for them. So I'd be on the lookout and give him consideration. Luke Teal, so he's good in defence and he can also play through the midfield as well. So can intercept, has some class and composure to him. So they're the things that you like to see. Pretty good athlete as well. And look, with injuries, has probably been a bit hampered as well this year. So we haven't probably seen the best of him this year, but he's one where there is possible scope to develop. And he could be picked up in the later region of the draft, potentially, would be where he could come into consideration. Will Verrill, so another South Australian, and another South Australian I actually think should be converted into a key defender. So with a Verrill, he's played mostly ruck and key forward as well, as that, again, not quite ruck height. He's about that 199, maybe 2 metre. Fairly athletic, good mark, reads it really well. But with, I guess, those attributes, again, I'm seeing a natural key defender. So a bit like a Phoenix Foster. I think with a Verrill, just put him behind the ball, let him read it, let him intercept, natural intercept mark. I think really that positional change would really do him wonders and could allow him, again, as with a Foster, to potentially be an AFL player. Not convinced on him as a ruck or key forward. If I was picking him as one of those, as with a Foster, I personally would just pass. But as a key defender, that's how I justify them inside my top 80 rankings, at least. So I think he's got that sort of ability where if he's available as a rookie, I think, well, terrific. Let's see if we can make him into a key defender if that's a position of need in terms of like someone longer term. Boyd Woodcock, so Port Adelaide fans would recognise the name as a former Port Adelaide forward and mid, And look, what he's been doing this year in the VFL has been phenomenal. So he's definitely stepped up his game and he's become a really good mid. So not only is he winning the ball, but he's pressuring really well as well and he's hitting the scoreboard. So if you're after that combo mid forward, he's a ready to go, albeit small mid. He's one who can, just plug and play. So, you can probably just get him as a rookie. That would be perfectly sufficient. And he can add to your rotation ultimately. So Port Adelaide could even consider him again. There's a lot of clubs that he could be a possible fit for, and he's definitely improved. So that's the thing you look for. Those who go back to the state leagues, they need to be definitively better than when they were delisted, and Woodcock is one of those instances where most certainly he has shown that improvement. Jed Adams, so talented key defender, can intercept a little bit, good athlete, so potentially developable, but well behind, for me at least, those others that I've got in the categories above. Jacob Anderson, good interceptor and good one-on-one defender, so he's got scope to develop potentially, and one that you could probably just pick up as a rookie quite easily, and I think could, again, be a piece in the right situation and given the right opportunities. Kane Bevan, tall mid, he's about that 192, 193 centimetre mid. For me, although he's been racking up huge numbers in the Waffle Colts, I haven't really seen that impact per possession, particularly during the under-18 champs. I found him quite quiet. You just didn't really feel the influence. So that's the reason I can't justify having a Bevan earlier than I have him. But whenever you've got a 192, 193 centimetre mid who can rack it up and win their own ball to a reasonable level at least, you have to give them due consideration. Hugh Bond, really good ball winning mid. Just thrives on the contested stuff. So the contested ball winning, the tackling, they're the areas that he's particularly good at, but you can chuck him behind the ball and he can play a role there too. But I like him as a mid. But of course, he doesn't necessarily have as many tricks as a lot of the other mids, so that's why he's in this category rather than earlier. Tyrell Dewar, talented WA forward. Just good around goal ultimately is his trick. Can't necessarily push up the field as much as others, but he can have some games where he really gets hot and plays good footy. So that's the type of forward you're looking at there. Patrick Dozzy, so overager, really good performance in the NAB League and he's also had a taste at VFL level as well. Just racks it up. Good numbers, great contested ball winning numbers. I like his skills too. So he's quite a skillful mid. So there's a lot to like there. But there's others where they'll have more tricks and more athleticism. So if he's picked, consider him as a rookie. Maybe late draft potentially if you're really committed. But that's the type of player I'd be looking at there. Darcy Edmonds, skillful outside type, can run a bit as well. Tom Emmett, overager from South Australia. So good forward, hits the scoreboard. Has some attributes that make him potentially draftable as well. And there is actually some interest in the case of Emmett. So he could maybe feature later in the draft. If not, he'd be well in the mix as a rookie. So he is a name that of the older types, although a lot of those that I'm rating here won't necessarily get picked up. Emmett is one who's firmly in the mix and has attracted interest from clubs. Jason Gilby, so he did really well in the 2K time trial, so only just lost to Hollands at the finish line. They both recorded essentially the same finish time. Really incredible endurance athlete, but probably lacks the hurt factor of others to necessarily be rated as highly. Steely Green, good ball winning mid, had a pretty good under-18 champs and has had a pretty good year. Ben Hempel, good intercepting defender, can rebound a little bit as well. Archie Lovelock, really like him as a forward. Hits the scoreboard, really damaging whenever he gets it inside 50, particularly on the lead. Bailey McDonald, he really stood out in his last game of the year. So I think it was the Metro Country game from memory. Really just the sheer acceleration with ball in hand and really has the run and dare. Lacks some composure, probably needs to take more time with ball in hand than he does. But look, in the late to rookie region, he'd be in the mix as really for a club looking for that run from defence. He definitely can provide that run and dare. Oscar Murdoch, good one-on-one defender, can intercept as well. So they're sort of the things to look at there. Paul Pascu, you can play him a little bit anywhere, but yeah, good as a mid defender, can win his own footy, can generate some drive too. So there's some of the things to look at. Taj Rahui, I've heard no interest in at all this year. And he's probably the only junior where there just hasn't really been any interest at all. So, but looking at what he did in particular last year, I was thinking Rahui might even be in the first round mix this year. And again, even this year, I've liked his play. He's a really natural crumbing forward, really talented around goal, has all the evasiveness, ground level craft. So he's a very developable footballer. And look, if I needed a small forward and say I've got a rookie pick and I don't mind taking a chance, I would more than happily take a chance on Rahui. So, yeah, good name and has a lot of talent to say the least. Really quick, but yeah, small forward. Kelsey Ripstra, really good pressure forward. Really a pure role player is how I would describe him, where just if you're looking for that forward pressure, maybe it's that Jason Castagna type. That's what Kelsey Ripstra brings to the table. So I wouldn't play him anywhere else, but as that sort of pressure forward, he is one where he has the scope to carve out a role. So that's why I've got him where I do. Callum Verrill, good intercepting defender. So not quite that key defender, but that sort of medium defender. Intercepts well, can rebound as well. Cooper Vickery, Hawthorn NGA, good rebounding defender. So has the skills, can generate some run as well. Jake Walker, good ball winning mid, can do some damage as well. So quite a good and damaging ball user at times. And for a very quick breakdown, I've done well actually getting through this video in one take. I thought I'd need a drink or something. But yeah, so going through the stats. So we had 14 mature ages. So this is not something you'll see on a lot of draft boards, and it frustrates me like anything. So a lot of people don't bother to acknowledge mature ages as worthwhile players. So if you go through people's, whether it's top 20 rankings, top 40 rankings, it's a rare day that you see any mature ages feature. And it's almost criminal that they're not included, because if you look back at any drafts past, you'd have to go back as much as 2008 to find a draft where there isn't at least one mature ager that is a clear top 20 player. So given that, you've just got a lot of people online who watch the junior ranks and don't pay any attention to the state leagues. So I make a real effort to cover the state leagues closely and not ignore them, because there's great opportunities that get missed every year, and they're among the best value opportunities in each draft. So, and oftentimes you see them even make them through into the preseason supplemental period now, or there's opportunities during the mid-season drafts. So you've got clubs that really are spending a bit more time on mature ages, to their credit, and the clubs that are picking a lot of mature ages are the ones that are being most thoroughly rewarded. So Geelong winning a premiership, well, that's no surprise. When you're getting guys like Tom Stewart, a Tim Kelly who they were able to trade, and then that allowed them to later on bring in Jeremy Cameron, or bringing in a Tyson Stengel as a delisted free agent, they're clearly paying attention. Whereas you can look at a North Melbourne, and the only two mature ages that they've drafted themselves were picked as a just during the mid-season drafts in the last 2 years. So that's really not enough, and that's a big reason why they haven't been a successful club in the draft by comparison. So mature ages are really important, and you need to identify them well. And there's a lot that I could have included that I didn't. But I've rightly sort of added in those that deserve to be in there on performance. So I've got 3 overages. I could possibly have a few more, but those that I had in there I was certainly comfortable including. So there's 4 delisted free agents, 2 out of retirement. Then I've got 5 father sons, 2 academy, 5 next gen academies. So that's a quick breakdown there. And I've also done a quick breakdown by state as well. So you've got 44 Victorians, 18 from WA, 20 from SA, 5 from Queensland, 3 from New South Wales ACT, 1 from Northern Territory, 2 from Tassie, and 4 who are formerly AFL listed players. So I'm not really going to break down where they come from, because it's just not as sort of applicable. So if they're former AFL players, look, if they're putting their name in the draft. They just want to make it onto an AFL club list versus maybe a few of the kids being drafted. They might be sort of a bit more keen to stay in their home state or whatever the case may be. So, but of course, in all drafts past, you've had more than half are Victorians. So even though I'm a Victorian myself, I display no bias towards Victorian prospects, and it's important that that's recognised as well. So, so you could have prospects that come through the school that I work at. So me, when I'm not doing stuff for ESPN, I work a full-time job in a school. Even players from there, I'm going to show no favoritism towards. And same story with players coming through the school that I attended as a student, same story. So yeah, I keep sort of those biases out of the equation and really just basically pick the players regardless of where they're likely to feature on draft day based on how I think their careers will pan out, who will be the best players. So other than YouTube, where you can follow me, if you're on Twitter at AFL Draft Expert, on there you'll find links to all my latest ESPN articles and also latest opinions as well. And yeah, during the days of the draft, I'll be most likely in recent years I've just been live tweeting not only who's been picked, but also like a quick sort of profile on their game and sort of how they go about their business. So that's always a very popular time for people to get behind me, and I always see my followers really sort of spike during that period. So yeah, make sure if you're a draft enthusiast that obviously you've followed me on Twitter for all that so you don't miss any of the action. On espn.com.au/AFL, I've been keeping busy and there's a lot of articles that will be coming through. There's two basically I've already got, I guess if you want to call it in the queue, that ESPN will be publishing in the next few days. But my most recent article that's been put up was my 3-round Phantom draft. So basically I've gone through really 1 through however many picks, might be about 65 or so. Basically all the bids, all the picks, and I've profiled each player. So you'll find that the quality of the profiles here will exceed what you'll find anywhere else in terms of accuracy and really giving you that real feel as to how each player plays. There have always been my major points of difference. And I also don't go soft in the respect that I actually, when I do Phantom drafts, I do the full order. So when I do finish my absolute final Phantom draft, you will see every bid, every pick, all the way through to the end of the draft. So not sure if others do that, but from what I'm aware of, usually you just get a first or maybe 2 rounds out of most other people who do their attempts online. So they're usually the reasons to check mine out. But and this piece has actually been my most popular based on my own Twitter analytics this year. So yeah, it's a worthwhile read to get a more detailed and clearer feel as to how those most likely to be picked go about their business and the sort of ranges you can expect to see them picked. I've also gone through, I did a trade and free agency review. So I graded all the clubs and I really broke down each of the trades and went into depth on, well, which trades were good for which clubs. So, of course, with some fairly strong opinions there, some fans will be happy, some obviously won't be, but that's the nature of it. I did a draft combine review, so spoke about some of the players who got really good numbers and how those numbers actually apply to what we see out on the field from them. My October power rankings, so you've got a top 20 there. So if you're looking for the greatest depth of information on the top prospects, that's the place to go. And again, over the coming weeks, if you're following me on Twitter, well, you'll get links to all my pieces that'll be dropping over the coming days and weeks. So that's certainly something that I would strongly recommend you guys at home do. But yeah, just as a quick reminder, make sure for my YouTube, if you haven't already, make sure you like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell for future updates. Because again, if I get 50 likes on this video today, or 50 or above, I will be making a top 100 rankings where I've actually rated them from 1, 2, 3 all the way down to 100. So you've got actual rankings and it will still be within those same tiers. So, and I might have a few different additional things to say about players as well. So maybe what maybe went into my thinking that helped determine the order as well. So that's something to definitely look forward to as well. But anyway, folks, see you in the next video.